Kelly, this question's for you. People with kidney disease often have challenging circumstances. With NKF's reach and connection to the kidney community, what are you hearing from them about mental health and wellness? And what are some of the ways that people with kidney disease are coping with the additional stress and anxiety related to COVID?
At the National Kidney Foundation, we're seeing, I think, a range of emotions and feelings that patients are experiencing. We have NKF Cares as our helpline where people can call and ask questions and receive education or support. And I think we've seen that, certainly some transplant patients who have been through social isolation before, who perhaps every flu season are used to wearing masks or taking extra precautions, are maybe weathering this a bit better because they feel like they've done this before and they're equipped to do it before. And it's just kind of part of the fabric of what they've been through and they know that feeling. And then for others, I think the social isolation in particular has been particularly daunting and a burden to folks who were maybe supporting themselves through their community and being actively connected to others. So I think for those folks, we've been trying to reach out more and to those digital aspects, trying to connect people either online or encouraging more people to reach out to friends and family on, like I said, mediums like this, so through video conferencing, and to kind of rethink the ways that they connect with their community. Certainly, we've seen a lot of people taking up hobbies, trying to do projects around the house that they've been meaning to do. Those with children or pets seem to have good distractions that they can now spend some more time with. And then I think for others, there's a sense of this being an opportunity to kind of, hit pause in life and think about what their priorities are and how they want to proceed or where they're going. And I think particularly around transplant candidates who have been looking for a living donor or considering finding a living donor, I think this has been an opportunity for people to maybe think about starting that website that they've been wanting to do, to ask folks in their family or friend network to consider donation, and do some of that work to prepare around that. This has been an opportunity to take advantage and having extra time to maybe focus their efforts on that. And with the National Kidney Foundation does have a program called The Big Ask, The Big Give that has some support services to help people tell their story and share what they've been going through so that people may be inspired to consider donation without necessarily, making that difficult ask.
Kelly, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. Valen, I saw you shaking your head through that, the entire question or the entire answer that Kelly just gave. I know you know this all too well. Probably you've checked the box on literally everything Kelly just said. So could you share some of those personal lessons that you've learned? I'm sure folks would be eager to hear, how you stay so positive and what you can say about mental wellness and resiliency in difficult times.
Absolutely. Yeah, I connected very much with what Kelly was saying. And I've been fortunate that I feel like positivity has been a coping mechanism for me. I think it's a little bit of who I am. I also think it's a choice. And I also think that I work at it. I've learned so many lessons with going through adversity. And I know that we all handle them differently and we all have varying challenges. But for me, keeping it as simple as breaking it down as one task and one day at a time was huge when I was going through transplant evaluation for liver transplant. I was so sick at the time that some days I could just get a shower and that could be all that I could do. But I really found that making goals and things that I wanted to do each day, even if it was just getting a shower and knowing that I accomplished what I set out to do, was really huge for me too. Keeping things organized and planned is something that just helps me through my journey. Really enjoying the simple pleasures is something that I've learned through this. When you go through big health issues, you just learn the value of life and every day and every moment, regardless of you're in great health. You know that you have to make the most of it no matter what's going on in your life. There's been really extraordinarily challenging times but there's been so many extraordinarily beautiful moments in my life, and I choose to focus on that. And I think that's been really helpful. I've, never been bitter about what I've gone through. I've always focused on getting better and focusing on the joy and finding the joy in each day, as little as that can be or as big as it can be. Being an advocate for myself really changed my life. And that started after my kidney transplant when I was 19. That's really when I started to take control of my health, because I've been a patient since I was 5. So I had my parents' help all through childhood and adolescence. And when I really took control and became an advocate for myself, it just was really empowering. And I learned how important that is for all of us to do, to educate ourselves and communicate with our team. And I think finding something you're passionate about, a drive, something that you love to do, something that every day, even if you're sick and not feeling well, it's something that you can hold on to and do. And for me, that's being a patient advocate. It's been so therapeutic. It's given purpose to all the pain that I've gone through. And I believe it's why I'm still alive today. All of those things really help. I think finding a community of people that really understand you and get you and have walked that path is life-changing. Most of my best friends are people in the transplant and kidney community. And it's the people that you can get together with and be like, what's your creatinine? What's your ALT? And you just spat out numbers. And it's like, you're one and you get it. And, you need those people, because if you'd line up 10 people and, 10 women in their 30s, there wouldn't be all that many that I could connect with. I don't have kids. I don't have a full-time career due to, back issues and disability. And when you find those like-minded people that that you're not alone and they understand you, that's been really life-changing for me. There's so much worry and fear and unknowns when you're living with chronic illness, and especially now for all of us in life, that a big thing for me is shifting any fear and negativity to gratitude. I'm really grounded in gratitude. And I think that that's what really helps me and gives me the fuel to keep going every day, is focusing on all the things that I have to be grateful for. And there are many. Mental wellness, self-care is so important. It is something that we need to make a priority. It's more than just going once a month for labs and going to my doctor appointments and all of that. You need to do that, but you also need to find positive outlets and things to do for your health and for your well-being every day. And that's something that I've just learned throughout the years, and I make it a big part of my health journey.
Valen, that was awesome. You're an incredible inspiration. You bring so much value to our conversation here. For people who don't already have that tribe, right? That group of people to reach out to, how do you connect with them? Where do you find others who are in the same boat, at least, that you are? Help us understand, especially for those who may not have that group right now.
Absolutely. Relating it directly to my journey and how that unfolded is a couple years after my kidney transplant, I learned of the PKD Foundation, and I have polycystic kidney disease. And I actually dove right into volunteering, and I started my own chapter back when I lived in Pennsylvania. I organized fundraising walks, I did support groups, and I sort of made that community for myself. I created it for others, but I created it for myself. And I love all of those people. I still remember the first person that walked into the first support group that I organized. But for people that aren't interested in going that way, when we moved to California, I contacted my local organ procurement organization. And for people that are in the transplant community, they can contact them, and they've got incredible support groups where they have meetings that you can go to and just learn and meet people. And that's where I met my really good transplant girlfriends right now. And there's a group of us that we're just really tight knit, and it's really helping right now because there's so much new things that we're going through, and we can have text group chains and calls and Zoom calls and talk to each other. And it's conversations that you need to have with other people that are really in it. So I think support groups are really big, and you can find them directly through organizations. And now there's even Face group, ones, and I'm seeing a lot of different Zoom support groups going on right now. I highly encourage it. It may be difficult for some people to be open and talk about their journey, but it's amazing how it feels when you hear somebody else saying everything of how you feel and you know that you're not alone.
I think that's really important. And we at the National Kidney Foundation also offer a couple of opportunities for people to connect with other like-minded patients as well who have been through similar experiences. Certainly some of the online communities that we have separate ones for transplant recipients, dialysis patients, even for parents of children with kidney disease, and people who are in earlier stages as well. And also living donors have a separate group as well. We also have a peer mentoring program for people who, to your point, Valen, may be a little nervous to connect and share their story. This offers an opportunity to be a bit more anonymous. It is over the phone. It's not by video. We connect people one-on-one to talk with somebody else who's in a similar situation. And I echo what you just said, Valen. I think the power of connecting with somebody who has been through something similar and can kind of validate all the things that you're thinking and feeling is really just the most powerful and beautiful situation to be in the world, especially during these times where I think people are feeling more and more alone, like they're the only ones facing these types of feelings and experiences. Even around the COVID-19 issues that we're facing, I think there's so many people that can relate specifically to how that is for transplant and kidney patients across the country. So I wholeheartedly agree and just wanted to plug some of those opportunities that we have at NKF as well. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing them. And I think the kind of the heart and the drive of where all of it comes from, of trying to help other people, is because going through issues when I was younger is I didn't have anyone else. I knew family members had PKD, but ironically, we didn't really talk about it much. I remember being in the nurse's office, a lot in middle school, high school. I remember not being able to participate in gym because of, my health issues. And there wasn't anybody else. I didn't have anybody to look up to. Like, I can't imagine if I saw a woman in her 20s or 30s that was vibrant and living healthy and really, enjoying her life and being like, oh, okay, I'll be okay. I can be like that someday. And I didn't have that. And I think that's why I just am really striving to be that person so that, future generations don't feel alone. They know that there is hope. They can see someone living a fulfilling life with the chronic issues that they have. And I think that's what really fuels my passion and why I just want to continue what I'm doing for as long as I can.
Well, I don't want to cut us off from this conversation because it's so good. But we're going to talk about tools and resources in a few minutes. And so I want to, though, bring Paul into the conversation. Paul, I know that MHA provides a lot of these resources and an ability for people to connect from a mental health perspective, that MHA is able to provide that. But help us understand, what are you hearing from the community, particularly among people who are managing chronic conditions around mental health? Do people with chronic conditions have to manage a unique set of mental health needs? Can you explain it all or provide any information?
Perhaps a bit, but let me return just first to the conversation that we've been having, because I did want to also underscore this whole notion of hope. I think that's critical. And the reality is that, right now, I think pretty much everybody, wakes up some mornings feeling quite hopeful and wakes up some other mornings feeling quite hopeless. And you can't always be certain what the trigger was, the night before, or, that's creating that. And many people who have expected to be even, expected to be kind of certain about their lives and the way they felt on any given day, have really experienced some tremendous disruption, and the trauma really that we've all gone through as a world right now, and as communities are going through these days as well, is meaningful. I mean, it actually does make a difference. And on those days that people are feeling less hopeful, those are days to remember those things that give you comfort, and to try to take comfort in those things by taking care of oneself and and doing things that need to be done. I think there's no question that people who approach us who have got multiple chronic conditions, because everybody who approaches us has, one or is at risk of one, which would be a mental health condition. But in particular, people who approach us with multiple chronic conditions do have to juggle the mental health side often with the physical health side. And, repeatedly will tell us that their physical health needs are fairly well tended to by the professionals that they have, even by the peer support groups they may have in those areas. But it's the mental health side that sometimes the specialists, they just don't have a lot of training in that. The clinical specialists, they're not as able to recognize what's going on those days. People are feeling less hopeful, and instead look at the numbers, right? They look at the lab results, the tests, the numbers, and don't take as much time to ask just how you doing or how you feeling, apart from whatever symptoms you may have, just how are you feeling? And so I think it's really important that we, just keep this in mind. And, we try to emphasize the importance of asking people how they're feeling and letting people use the language that they will use to describe the way they're feeling, and then making use of that. And as we talk about tools in a little bit, we can talk about some of the tools we all have available, but really making use of what people are saying and how people are communicating that to help put them kind of at the center of our world, the world of people who are trying to help take care of them, that the people who are trying to assist, the people who are trying to provide services and supports, to try to take guidance from people, because, one thing that gives people hope is knowing they're in control, and letting people be in control of as much as they can be in control of, and taking direction from them is a way that we can help everybody.
Well, thanks for that. This theme of hope, right? This theme of from the pandemic, that we're all in it together, right? Even as our journeys are different, this pandemic has impacted us all. So if we think about this idea as it relates to mental health, what can each of us do to support the mental health and resiliency of people with chronic conditions? I'll ask that question to everyone. Any thoughts?
I think when we think of something as specific as a pandemic, it's easy to say we're all in this together. But when you think of something as broad of a spectrum as mental health, that's something that we need to continue to work to elevate the conversation, to get everybody on board. And I think for me as an advocate, what I can do and what I will continue to do is be as authentic and vulnerable as I can be in my journey, to let others know that they're not alone and what they're feeling is okay and normal, and to encourage them to continue to share their feelings, because I think that's very important, to have positive outlets and spaces that they feel comfortable to share how they're feeling. Because I feel like once we start to get quiet and not express, and that kind of, stays inside of us, I think that that's not good. And just from personal experience, I know just when I was younger, I didn't have those outlets. So I just stayed quiet, and it's like, I'm fine and I'm okay. And now it feels great to be able to express, what I'm going through, and to let others know that, that it's okay and that they'll be okay. So I think that it's really important for me to continue to be authentic, especially right now as we're dealing with different issues on top of our chronic health issues.
And that was very well put, Valen. And I think from NKF's perspective as a patient advocacy organization, when we think about resiliency and kind of weathering storms like this, we're always really wanting to equip people with information and education. So we've been working really hard to make sure that there's information that's accurate and up to date for our patient community, specifically around COVID, and certainly that includes mental health and support resources as well. And just making sure that people do feel empowered, that they have the right information to make good decisions with their care, or even just in their day-to-day, with some of the tips that Valen has mentioned around, sticking with routines and things like that. Also, our CEO is a transplant recipient himself, and so he's actually been blogging weekly. And I think that has also, to your point about authenticity, Valen, I think, sharing your stories and getting out there is helpful. Not only, I think it's therapeutic for him, honestly, writing about his experience going through COVID as a transplant recipient, but also helping so many others and sharing your story. And you never know when you sharing what you're going through, even if it's a difficult situation, may actually be helping somebody not feel so alone. So I think the more people can reach out and share in whatever ways they can and that they're comfortable in, that's always really, really helpful and perhaps potentially powerful in changing other people's lives as well.
I think that's the
Absolutely.
consensus here. I would say the exact same thing. It's the most important thing that we can do is share our stories. And that gives people comfort, people on the receiving end of that story, it gives them some comfort to share their stories as well. Now, certainly you can overshare. It's possible to overshare and then not listen to what's coming back. But honestly, the biggest change I think that's occurred in the mental health space, in particular over the last 20 years, has been a willingness, particularly of younger people, to share their stories, to share their narratives, and for other younger people then to be able to relate to them and react to them, and not just be lectured, by older people about here's what you should do and shouldn't do. And I think older people are beginning to pick up on this a bit now too, and are becoming a little more open, and not as open as they should be, but a little more open in sharing their own stories.
It's a work in progress.
Yeah, it sure is.
Thank you, guys. Any final thoughts overall about caring for yourself during COVID before we talk about some more tools and resources?
I think be kind to yourself. There's so much going on. And when I talk to my transplant friends, it's like, we're trying to make a decision, then we make a decision, then we're like, okay, we survived that decision. Now we'll go on to the next decision. It's like, we're all just learning as we go here day by day, as we're flooded with new information. And I think we just need to really take it a day at a time and be kind to ourselves.
Yeah, and not to have too great expectations. A lot of people, sitting at home, decided to take on, brand new challenges. And it's one thing to do the daily chores that you've been putting off that you can do, but people who decided, who had never learned a language before, that they were going to learn a brand new language, probably were just setting themselves up, most of them, for failure and to feel bad about themselves later on. So I often say that for me, I play the accordion. So for me, I can sit and play the accordion, and that's not what I would recommend for somebody who's never played the accordion before. Probably won't go very well for them. So that's part of being kind to yourself, I think, is not having unreasonable expectations that you can accomplish too much or do things way beyond what you've been able to do before, just because you'll have all this time on your hands.
That's funny. That makes me think, I have a dear friend that's a counselor. And in the beginning, when all this started, I was like, well, I guess this is a perfect time to write my book. I should write my book. Why wouldn't I? And she's like, now don't put big things on yourself. You're dealing with a huge thing as is a pandemic. Now don't put more pressure on yourself that you should be doing more things. And it was actually really insightful. I was like, okay, I'll just take it easy a little bit.
I think that's a great point too. And I think another thing we've been repeating, in addition to what Valen's mentioned about keeping with your routines and doing small things, is just to listen to your body. If you need to rest, rest. Don't try to clean the entire house today or mow the entire lawn. I think that's great to kind of keep reasonable mindset about the goals you're setting and challenges you're taking on in this new era.